Have you completely lost your mind? My voice trembled as I shouted into my phone, barely recognizing the raw emotion in it. My father's funeral had taken place that day, and yet, there on my laptop screen, the images told a different story. Liam, grinning at his best friend Daniel's bachelor party, a drink in hand, surrounded by women in revealing dresses. The timestamp made my stomach turn, 2:45 in the afternoon last Saturday. The exact moment I was standing at my father's graveside, watching his casket descend into the earth. I had called Liam 3 times that day, each attempt met with a simple text, feeling too sick to come. But the photos told the truth. My name is Emma Collins, and at 28 years old, I never expected to lose both my father and my fiancé in the span of a single week. Not that Liam was physically gone, he was still on the other end of the call, stammering excuses about obligations and how much Daniel had needed him there. But I knew, in that instant, that the man I had planned to marry had ceased to exist for me the moment I saw those pictures. What hurt the most wasn't even the drinking or the women. It was the look on his face, the sheer, uninhibited joy, while I was drowning in grief. Still wrapped in one of my father's old cardigans, the one I had practically lived in since his passing, I sat at my kitchen counter, staring at the engagement ring on my finger. The once dazzling 3-carat diamond now felt unbearably heavy, as if it was searing into my skin. "You just don't understand, Emma." Liam's voice took on that condescending tone I had grown too used to. "Daniel's my best friend. This was his last big celebration before getting married. Your dad, well, he was already gone. It's not like me being there would have changed anything." His words hit like a physical blow, casual, thoughtless cruelty masquerading as logic. My father had never been fully convinced about Liam, even when he was at his weakest. From his hospital bed, he had gently asked if I was certain about my choice. "You'll figure him out eventually, sweet pea," he had said, his expression knowing. And now, only days after losing him, I finally understood exactly what he had seen all along. The signs had been there long before the funeral. My father's battle with cancer had lasted 8 grueling months, months of watching a strong, unwavering man, the father who had raised me alone after my mother's passing, slowly slip away. Through every hospital visit, every exhausting round of treatment, Liam had always found a reason not to be there. A meeting at work, a family gathering, an emergency with friends. I had defended him to my father, to myself, convincing myself that not everyone could handle the weight of watching someone they loved deteriorate. But grief doesn't allow for illusions. It strips away every excuse, forcing you to see the truth you ignored for too long. My father had been my anchor, my guiding light, the one who taught me how to change a tire, how to stand my ground. He had juggled 2 jobs just to put me through college, never missing a single parent-teacher meeting or dance recital. Even in his final days, his concern had been for me, not himself. "Just promise me you'll take care of yourself, sweet pea. Don't let anyone dim your light," he had said, squeezing my hand with what little strength he had left. I had nodded, changing the subject, unwilling to acknowledge the meaning behind his words. Sophia, my best friend since college, had tried to warn me too. She had noticed how Liam brushed off my opinions during conversations, how he excluded me from important work events where other partners were welcome. "He treats you like an afterthought, Emma," she had said gently. But I had been too caught up in the fantasy I had constructed, the charming marketing executive who had swept me off my feet, the picture-perfect sunset proposal on the beach, the illusion of the perfect life I thought I was building. Losing my father shattered that illusion completely. There was no escaping reality anymore. The man I was supposed to marry had chosen to celebrate with his friends while I was burying my father. He had laughed and drank while my world collapsed. I exhaled sharply, my gaze returning to the photos on my screen. Liam, carefree, tossing bills at a dancer while my mascara-streaked face had been buried in my hands at the funeral. Another photo, Daniel perched on Liam's shoulders in a pool at 4 in the afternoon, the same time I had stood before a crowd, struggling to hold myself together during my father's eulogy. Each image was a fresh wound, cutting deeper than the last. The comments underneath the post made it worse. "Best bachelor party ever. Living your best life, bro." Meanwhile, my own phone was filled with messages of sympathy and support, words of kindness I still hadn't found the strength to answer. Emma, are you still there? Liam's voice pulled me back into the present, the static on the line the only indication of his presence. Look, I get that the timing wasn't great, but you're overreacting. It's not like I could just ditch Daniel. We've been best friends since high school. I could hear the background noise of his office, the clatter of keyboards, the murmur of voices. Even now, during this conversation, I wasn't his priority. Something inside me shifted. It was subtle but absolute, like a switch being flipped. The sorrow that had been weighing me down gave way to something colder, something sharper. Clarity. The tears stopped. My breathing steadied. You're right, Liam, I said, my voice eerily calm as I twisted the engagement ring off my finger. The timing couldn't have been worse, just as it hadn't been when he skipped Dad's last Christmas for a company ski trip or when he walked out midway through Dad's birthday dinner because Daniel needed help moving. I could almost hear the exasperation in his voice, the way he would roll his eyes over the phone. And then, in that moment, it hit me. This wasn't just about the bachelor party. This was the culmination of years of overlooked betrayals, of boundaries I had allowed him to cross, of warning signs I had conveniently ignored. If Dad were here, he'd be so disappointed in how little I had valued myself. You know what, Emma? I've had enough of this guilt trip, Liam snapped, his voice rising in frustration. I get that you're upset about your dad, but life moves forward. Daniel spent thousands on this party, and as his best man. I didn't let him finish. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles turned pale. As his best man? So you had no choice but to stand by while he took body shots, while I was saying my final goodbye to my father. You just had to pose with those women while I was making arrangements for his funeral. My voice trembled, but it wasn't from grief anymore. A surge of anger that had been building for 3 years finally erupted. Tell me, Liam, did I ever cross your mind that day? The silence on his end was suffocating. Then, after a moment, he responded in that condescending tone he had mastered over the years. Of course, babe. I even sent you a text, remember? A bitter laugh slipped from my lips. Oh, right. A single text. One message saying you were too sick to come, followed by a sad face emoji. That's what my father's funeral, what my grief was worth to you. I turned to my laptop, opening my email with newfound resolve. You want to know something interesting, Liam? Daniel's fiancé just sent me some videos from that weekend. Apparently, she feels terrible about what happened. I heard his sharp inhale on the other end of the line. Would you like to know the exact time you posted that TikTok of you doing the worm on the beach? I continued, my voice calm despite the storm brewing inside me. Because I can tell you exactly what I was doing at that moment, 3:27 in the afternoon. I was standing at the podium, trying to summon the strength to read the eulogy I had written for my dad. There was a rustling sound, followed by the faint click of a door shutting. It seemed like, at last, he was realizing the gravity of the situation. Emma, listen to me, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Those videos? They don't tell the full story. I was just trying to keep Daniel's spirits up. You know how he gets when he drinks. More excuses. There were always more excuses. But this time, I wasn't falling for them. Let me tell you exactly what those videos do show, Liam, I said, my voice steady despite the weight of everything crashing down. They show you downing shots with the groomsmen at 2 in the afternoon, right when I texted you, asking if you could at least come to the reception. They show you dancing on tables at 5, while I was at Dad's house, sorting through his belongings with Sophia because I couldn't bear to do it alone. But most importantly, they reveal the truth about you. Not the version of you I've been convincing myself existed for the past 3 years. The background noise of Liam's office faded, replaced by what I assumed was him slipping into a quieter space, maybe a stairwell. You're being dramatic, he hissed. This isn't even about the party, is it? This is about your dad. You're just looking for someone to blame because he's gone. His words struck like a slap across the face. I glanced at the framed photo on my desk, Dad and me at my college graduation, both of us grinning. He had worked extra shifts for months to help cover my final semester. You're right about one thing, I said, surprised by how steady I felt. This isn't just about the party. It's about the fact that while you were having the time of your life at that beach resort, Sophia drove 3 hours in the pouring rain to be with me. It's about how Daniel's fiancé, someone I've only met twice, sent me a heartfelt condolence card while you couldn't even bother to show up. It's about how, time and time again, you've proven that your comfort will always come before my pain. I heard him attempt to cut in, but for once, I refused to let him steer the conversation. These words had been trapped inside me for far too long. You want to talk about time, Liam? Fine, let's talk about it. I scrolled through my phone's photo gallery. Here's a nice shot of you doing karaoke at 6 in the evening, the exact moment I was having a breakdown in my car because Dad's empty house felt unbearable. And look at this one from Sunday morning. You, lounging poolside with a mimosa, while I was sitting in a funeral home, signing paperwork for the final arrangements. Should I keep going? The pause on the other end stretched long, punctuated only by the sound of him clearing his throat. Okay, I messed up, he finally admitted. But there was no genuine remorse in his voice, just irritation. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? Fine, I'm sorry. But you can't just throw away 3 years over one mistake. Think about everything we've planned, the wedding, the house we talked about buying. Are you really willing to give up our future over this one bad decision? My eyes landed on the engagement ring sitting on the counter. I remembered how proud I had been to show it to Dad in the hospital. His reaction had taken me by surprise. Rather than offering congratulations, he had gently taken my hand and asked, "But does he make you proud, sweet pea?" At the time, I had dismissed his concern without much thought. Yet now, those words echoed in my mind like a warning I had failed to recognize. You're right again, Liam, I said in a hushed tone. One mistake shouldn't end a relationship. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about a single mistake. This isn't one mistake, is it? It's just the first time I've been strong enough to see them all clearly. Liam's voice wavered, the usual condescending tone replaced by something closer to desperation. What are you saying? I picked up the engagement ring, rolling it between my fingers one last time. I had spent so many nights admiring how it sparkled, envisioning a future that now felt like it belonged to someone else. A version of me that had been smaller, quieter, someone who had settled for fragments of affection and mistaken them for love. I'm saying that my father's final gift to me was clarity, I replied, slipping the ring into an envelope along with the photos I had printed from Daniel's fiancé's social media. He spent his entire life showing me what real love looks like, being there when it mattered, prioritizing my happiness over convenience, standing by me through difficult times, especially when things got hard. My voice wavered slightly, but I refused to stop. And you, Liam, you've spent the last 3 years showing me exactly the opposite. A heavy silence settled between us, thick with all the things I had left unsaid for far too long. The quiet held every disappointment I had swallowed when he skipped family dinners, every forced smile when he dismissed my successes, every tear I had hidden when he chose his friends over me. Finally, Liam spoke, his words sharp with anger. So that's it? You're really going to throw everything away over this? God, Emma, I always knew you were sensitive, but this is ridiculous. Take some time to calm down. Call me when you're thinking rationally again. I pressed the envelope shut, sealing it with the certainty I had lacked for so long. Actually, I said, my voice steady, I am thinking rationally, for the first time in years. The ring will be in your mailbox tomorrow. Don't contact me again. Before he could respond, I ended the call and blocked his number. My hands trembled, but my mind had never been clearer. In the quiet of my apartment, my father's voice echoed in my memory, "You'll figure him out eventually, sweet pea." Tears streamed down my face, but I found myself smiling through them. You were right, Dad, I whispered. You were right all along. The weeks that followed blurred together in a haze of condolence cards, homemade casseroles from well-meaning neighbors, and an eerie silence from Liam. I had expected more resistance, some grand gesture, a desperate attempt to fix what was broken. Instead, all I received were a string of increasingly frustrated texts from his sister, accusing me of being selfish, of breaking her brother's heart. When the messages turned spiteful, I blocked her number, too. During those difficult days, Sophia all but moved in. She came over after work with takeout in hand, sitting with me as I oscillated between crying over my father and seething over Liam. You know what the worst part is? I confided one evening, curled up on the couch in my father's old cardigan. Every time something happens, my first instinct is still to call him. I keep wanting to tell Dad about all of this. Sophia simply nodded, offering no empty words of comfort. Some wounds didn't need fixing, just understanding. The real moment of reckoning came when I started sorting through my father's things. In his study, tucked between a few papers, I found a letter addressed to me, written just weeks before he passed. My dearest Emma, it began, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here to tell you these things in person. But there are some truths that need to be said. He wrote about how proud he was of me, how much joy I had brought into his life. But then, the words that made my breath catch. I've watched you shrink yourself to fit into Liam's world, sweet pea. I've seen you dim your light to keep from outshining him. That's not the daughter I raised. That's not the woman you're meant to be. Sitting in the middle of my father's study, surrounded by the pieces of his life, the coffee mug still resting on his desk, his reading glasses folded neatly beside it, something inside me shifted. It dawned on me that my grief wasn't just for my father's passing. I was mourning the person I had become with Liam. The way I had made myself smaller, the way I had learned to apologize for having needs, the way I had accepted far less than I deserved. Dad had seen it all. And in his final act of love, he had given me permission to let go. That night, I finally did something I had been avoiding. I opened my laptop and scrolled through old photos. There was the night Liam proposed, me beaming at the camera while he looked distracted, already glancing at his phone. A snapshot from our last Christmas together, where he spent the evening talking business with my cousin's husband instead of engaging with my family. Even in our happiest memories, the warning signs had been there all along. I had just refused to see them. "Oh, Dad," I murmured into the empty room, my voice barely above a whisper. "How did you manage to see everything so clearly when I was completely blind to it?" 3 days later, life put me to the test. I was at the grocery store, aimlessly pushing my cart down the aisles, lost in thought, when I suddenly collided, quite literally, with Daniel and his new wife, Sarah. My breath caught in my throat. They were the first people from Liam's circle I had encountered since everything had fallen apart. Before I could fumble for an excuse and slip away, Sarah stepped forward and pulled me into a tight embrace. "Emma, I am so sorry," she said earnestly, her eyes filled with genuine concern as she pulled back to look at me. "I've been meaning to reach out, but I wasn't sure if you'd want to hear from me. What Liam did, there's no excuse for it." Behind her, Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his guilt unmistakable as he avoided my gaze. His unease was almost tangible. Finally, after an awkward pause, he blurted out, "I told him not to come." When he showed up at the party, I asked if he had gone to the funeral. "He told me you had assured him not to worry, that you had plenty of support." The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed harsh, the space around me too small, too suffocating. I should have known he was lying. I should have questioned it, said something, done something. "I'm sorry, Emma," Daniel added, his voice thick with regret. Standing there, surrounded by shelves of cereal boxes and canned goods, something in me shifted. The wall I had built to protect myself cracked just a little under the weight of their sincerity. I let out a small, unexpected laugh. "You know what's ironic?" I said, shaking my head. He didn't even acknowledge my dad's passing. No flowers, no card, just a single text saying he was sick. Then silence, until those party photos surfaced. Sarah's expression darkened with anger. I saw Daniel flinch, his shame deepening. After a brief hesitation, Sarah added, "That's not even the worst part. He's been telling everyone that you ended things because you were emotionally unstable after your dad's death. He insists you're not thinking clearly, that eventually, you'll come to your senses." She pulled out her phone and showed me his recent social media posts. Carefully curated updates, painting him as the patient, understanding fiancé struggling with a grieving partner's irrational choices. Strangely, I didn't feel the anger I thought I would. Instead, an unexpected calm washed over me. I squared my shoulders. Let him say whatever he needs to so he can sleep at night. The people who matter know the truth. And those who believe his lies? They were never meant to be part of my life anyway. For a fleeting moment, I saw admiration in Sarah's eyes, while Daniel looked even more ashamed. It has now been 6 months since my father passed away and 4 months since I walked away from Liam. The grief still lingers, ebbing and flowing like the tide. Some days, I can smile at my dad's photos. Other days, I instinctively reach for my phone to call him, only to remember he's gone. But the pain of leaving Liam? It faded far quicker than I ever imagined, replaced by a newfound sense of freedom I hadn't even realized I was missing. Just last week, while going through the last of my dad's belongings, I stumbled upon his old leather journal. On its final page, he had written something that made me laugh through my tears. My Emma has always been stronger than she knows. Life's hardest moments are often gifts in disguise. They reveal who we truly are, and, more importantly, who others truly are too. Next to those words, he had drawn a simple yet powerful sketch, a butterfly breaking free from its cocoon. It was exactly the kind of quiet wisdom he had shared with me all my life, right up until the end. And as I stared at that drawing, I finally understood. Losing him shattered my heart, but in doing so, it also broke the illusion I had been trapped in with Liam. Sometimes, our deepest losses lead us to our greatest strength. And now I find myself on the other side of it all, changed, yet more myself than ever before. Grief has a way of carving space within us, making room for truth to take root. My father's passing was the hardest thing I have ever faced, but it also gave me the clarity to recognize that what I had with Liam was never real love. The ache of my dad's absence remains, but it no longer weighs me down. Instead, it serves as a reminder of the lessons he left behind, to cherish my worth, to expect nothing less than genuine love, and to never let anyone dim my light. Liam is now just a closed chapter, gone along with the engagement ring, the photos, and the carefully constructed illusion of our relationship. In their place, I have found something infinitely more valuable: peace. I've started journaling again, filling the pages of the notebook I found among my dad's things. Every word feels like a step forward, a way to reclaim my voice. Tonight, I sit on my dad's porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The sky is painted in hues he would have called perfect for fishing. And for the first time in what feels like forever, I sense something unexpected. Hope. Life doesn't just continue after heartbreak, it finds a way to flourish. Even in the shadow of loss, even in the ruins of a love that was never truly love, there is space for new beginnings. And as I wrap myself in my dad's old cardigan, I know this with certainty. I'm ready to grow,